Hello, I'm Johnny K.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tommy's Trains. Here's a train set that I think you'll like, and so I'm just moving these Lion Chiefs out of the way. This is an old cab control train with a CW80 transformer, so you have to have a place to put this, and it wires to the track, so you can't just sit in a chair with a remote. But these came out in like the mid 2000s, and this was the thing, around 2006-ish, was this CW80 transformer, and at some point they went to a 40 watt. Some of them had like a booster, but this 80 watt transformer is pretty much all you needed. And it was really a step up from the little ones you got in the 80s and 90s. So the way this would hook is you've got two little spade terminals here, and then you've got a black and a red here. So you have to find the track that has the notch in it, which is this one. And then when you look on the back, and the interesting thing is that a lot of these tracks, they could be powered. So here's just a regular straight one, and it has the tabs in here. So let's say you had a giant layout and you wanted to put some wire feed in it. All you need to do was just get a couple of these terminals, plug it in, and then run some wire back and splice it in here, and then you just have to make sure that you got the the positive and negative, the polarity correct. Otherwise it would short out, and when it shorts out, the light will flash, so you'll know right away if you've wired it wrong. So the way that these Lionels work is the power is here, so what it does is it picks it up and then it goes back out through the sides. So if you get a shock, you'd push your finger across, whereas the HO, you only had two. And the advantage of the Lionel is you can make all kinds of neat layouts without shorting itself out. Like if you had a switch here, you'd follow this outside rail around your loop and then come back, and then it would be here. So you'd have a short. You'd have to either put some sort of a switch controller or with insulators, and there's a whole, Atlas used to have a bunch of stuff. You could throw some switches and you'd change the polarity, and if you had everything set up right, it worked really well. Bachmann has a reverser. You get it by two. For the HO, there's two like re-railers with the little plug-in terminals, and those go back to this central unit. And so what happens is when the train comes through, it realizes it and it flips the polarity, and then it comes back and flips it back. So it's kind of neat. And I had one. It works pretty well for the most part. So you just slip these little terminals on. You gotta be careful you don't break them, and then they sit in here like this, and then you just push it down in this little groove and then stick it back out here. Then it pops out the side and you put your rails together. So it still uses the same fast track that's been out for 20-ish years plus. The only difference is you're controlling it differently. Whether you're using one of the older sets or a newer one, you're still going to need a 110 outlet and then possibly some batteries. And one of the last videos I was telling you about, you could run a bunch of Lion Chiefs, and this is the universal Lion Chief remote. So you could have three of these Lion Chief trains, and you've got 1, 2, and 3. So what you do is you take those three locomotives and you program them. And it's very simple. It's really great because then you don't have to wire separate blocks in like you'd have to in the old days to get different trains. This one right here, you just pick the train you want and then you park it on a siding, and then you take the other one out, and it works really well. So then you've got your black and your red here. So you just mate these up. And if you reverse it, all it's going to do is just when you think you're going backwards, you'll be going forward. You're not going to hurt anything. So these right here are your old CW80 transformers, and they're pretty heavy. They're a solid unit for sure. When I used to have a big layout for my kids, I pretty much cut these terminals and added more wire so I could move the train down a little further from the transformer. And I also wired blocks in like I was telling you. So this right here is basically your standard 442 Atlantic locomotive. It's pretty much the same thing that Lionel has had for a lot of years. It's the same train the can motor, the smoke unit, and the whistles and the tender. That's pretty much it. Then you had the rail sounds that came out, and there was the chug chug or something that came out in the, I'm trying to remember what they called it, sounds of rail or something like that. And it was one of the first things they came out with in the 70s, and Johnny Cash did one of those commercials, so that was really cool.
Trains and trucks are rolling across this land and back. Trains and trucks are moving where the highway meets the track. And here they are in Lionel's brand new Trains and Trucking sets for your kids. Everything here's included. Cranes at work, cargo, track, buildings, big trucks, and big trains for small hands to play with. It's Lionel Trains and Trucking where the highway meets the track.
Sounds of Steam is what it was called. So, the difference between these and like these Lion Chief ones is this one, I'm not telling you to take your train and push it around the track, but if you're just trying to move it ahead, it works. But these new ones, they lock, they don't move. So if you try to shove it, you end up uncoupling your track and things like that. So here's your standard tender. This is basically the tender that came with every locomotive that Lionel put out with. The color's different, but it's the same thing. And some of them they had a slope tender that were kind of cool. But when you got a steam locomotive, this was pretty much the tender that you got. So it's really not prototypical for this train, but it's what always came out with Lionel's. Now they had Holiday Traditions trains. There's 2 or 3 different Lionel train sets available. This one basically is a knockoff of the New York Central system. So 9-volt battery goes in this car here. We'll see if it works. It's may or may not. It's been a while. So Lionel's had Christmas trains for quite a while. There's a number of them out right now. There's the Frozen one. There's a Disney one. A Toy Story one. Trying to think that you've got 2 Polar Express ones. You've got the passenger car Polar Express with the Berkshire 284, and then you've got the 080, freight train. But this one here is pretty much the locomotive, legacy locomotive that Lionel had. This has die-cast trucks on it, and here's your drawbar. It's just the old. This is what I was talking about in one of my previous videos about. These are great for kids in 8 plus because you really can't hurt it too much. If you get it on the floor. If you knock it off a table, things are different, but this whole drawbar connection is way better than what's on the new trains, which is like this, and there's like a little telephone jack, and it plugs in, and it's really a great point of failure. This whole thing is plastic. So whereas these old ones has a metal drawbar, this whole thing is plastic, this whole assembly. You get a little bit of metal there, but then this is plastic, and there's some soldered wires in here with some heat shrink on it, and the same thing over here. So it's really a great point of failure. So these old ones better for little kids. And for some reason my boxcar is acting up at the moment, so I can't get the Christmas sounds to play. But the Lionel had a bunch of these that came out at various times, different years, so they had different logos on them, different designs, but pretty much the same. Now this car here has plastic bottom. It's got die-cast trucks and operating couplers. So with Lionel's, you've got the knuckle couplers, and if you've got a connector, an accessory activator, you go over it and you use it to power on the power supply, and it trips this so it opens, and you can uncouple your car. So you can put those on sidings and uncouple your cars without having to walk over and do it. Or you can just walk over and push the little uncoupling bar down. So one thing I really like about Lionel's, besides the fact that they're big, they're easy to see, they're easy to work on, is switching with Lionel trains is so simple. So you don't want to run these without smoke fluid in them. So it doesn't take a whole lot, just a couple of drops, a little dab will do you with these. Usually these come sealed, so you have to take like a thumbtack or something and pierce the end, and you only need a couple drops. On the Locomotive, you've got a smoke unit you can turn on and off, so if you don't want to use the smoke, if it bothers you, you can turn the smoke unit off, but what you don't want to do is leave the smoke unit on and then continue to run the train without smoke fluid in it, because you'll burn the little smoke generator out of it. Also, you can lock out reverse, so it only goes forward, and if you've got a little kid running it, then they can't back into stuff, I guess. So that's always an option. This right here is the North Pole Central car, and Lionel has made a version of this car as long as I can remember, and this one's got an elf and a reindeer, but you've got the Lone Ranger and the bad guy. There's a circus one with a giraffe and a clown. There's just a lot of these different things coming out, and this crate load is pretty much the same as it's always been. With John Deere gondola with the same crate load. It's just the graphics are different with cane to canes, toy trains, and all kinds of different things in there. So neat little gondola. It's pretty heavy. It's a solid pound at least. So it's pretty heavy. And then you just hook it on. These trains have a one traction tire on them, and you can change it. You just have to unhook one of the rods with a screwdriver, and the manual tells you how to do that. And the new tire is going to be a little hard to put on, so it's like putting a rubber band on it. It's a little bit too small. And then we've got our caboose, and this one's lit. So Merry Christmas North Pole caboose is just your offset cupola, and this one, does have window glass in it. A lot of them in the 70s didn't have it, and I don't remember. I think like Coast or Kellogg's or something owned Lionel at one point, and they really cheapened it. And then there was another company that owned it, and Neil Young, I believe, owned it at one point, and now it's moved from the United States to China. And I don't know exactly when that happened. I think probably around the year 2000-ish is what I'm guessing, because everything kind of changed with these trains. So it's just a basic train that you can get to put under your tree. You can set this up a little bit different. There's 4 straight sections, so you can put the oval like this, or you can put 2 on each side and 2 there to make like a square almost, and then that'll fit around your tree. And so it's kind of neat to have this running around your tree. Backwards. So this has a gear drive on it with a little, you can see that little pinion gear there that turns this one, and then it makes the whole thing work. And it's inside this, so that's kind of neat, but it's pretty heavy. And you can see it's going that way. I called one of the more deluxe Atlantics that they made. This one has the actual rails that are attached. The cheaper one, there was a Penn Central. It was like the cheapest decent Lionel that you could get, and it was the 442, but these handrails were like molded into it, so they weren't shiny, they were just dull. And the new Pennsylvania train is this train. So they changed it from this to this, and this became their standard train. I'm gonna guess around 2011 or 12-ish. And then they came up with the Lion Chief probably through 2013, 14 maybe. I'm trying to remember when I got my first one. I got a John Deere one. So this one here doesn't have a bell. It has a whistle, but no bell. And the tender is a whistle tender. It's not digital. It just sucks the air through it and blows it out like a little whistle. So there's a little motor in it that sucks the air through a little thing. But that's pretty much their standard old-fashioned Lionel whistle. And to reverse this train, there's two ways you can do it. One, you can push the thing down, you can put it in neutral, which is here, and then you come back up again and it changes direction. Or you can just hit the direction, but you have to hit it twice, because what happens is you put it in neutral with the first push and then you put it back in. So neutral and then back around again. With these trains, there was an add-on set, and I think you can still get one. And I'll put a link to the add-on set that I got. It's got like a tool car or a Christmas toy car. There's a hand car with Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus, and I don't remember what the other. Oh, it's a reindeer car with reindeers popping up and down. And that car too was pretty much something that Lionel's always had. They either had horses sticking their heads out, or people the clown bobbing his head in and out, or different things like that. So pretty typical legacy train cars, and it's a nice little train. You can pick these up used for $100 or less, maybe even. So if you want to get somebody into a Lionel train, don't go on Amazon and buy yourself a used one. I've had really terrible luck with buying their used trains. It's like people buy them and bust them all up, put them back in the box and send it back, and then Amazon puts it on sale and sends it back to you, but they haven't checked it, so you end up getting somebody else's problems. And you can either send it back or they'll discount it deeper, but it's really disappointing. So you're better off to go to a train show. Like, we have train shows up here in Maine occasionally. You can go and you can buy a lot of stuff that they've got kicking around, and you can get set up for less than $100 with a basic train set. Once you start getting bigger and you start adding stuff on, 4x8 sheets of plywood, and they've got a trestle for this and bridges, and when I was raising my children, about they're 22 now-ish, I would get the Ertl. Used to go you'd go to a John Deere dealership, and they'd have these Ertl farm sets, and the title of them escapes my brain. There was a series, and they had like a house, and they had all kinds of different barns and animals, and it's 1/64th. Lionel trains are 1/48 or 1/43rd. Either 1/40 to 1/43rd. I don't remember anymore. But the Lionel cars, they're like this. But if you buy a train set with like a John Deere logo train set, it comes with a 1/64 tractors on it. So to me, the 1/64 or 1/43rd, 1/48, whatever it is, I don't remember anymore. It doesn't really matter. It's so close. It's not like anybody's going to notice. They're kids, and so it pretty much works great. You can get all these different buildings and farmhouses and set up this whole village, and it was great. Roads everywhere, and so my kids really enjoyed it. We had a great time when they were little. We'd have the trains and the tractors and the barns and everything. It was really fun. So just something, heads up if you want to get your kids into something fun. A Lionel train set with some 1/64 buildings. You can get them on eBay, and I don't remember what they're called anymore, but they're Ertls. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, put them down below. Tell me what you like to get for Christmas. What's your train of choice? There's a lot of different scales now, and pretty much the standards were always O, HO, and N. Sometimes you'd see S scale. So S scale is like 1/64, so that's more like what would be the right size. But S and O are pretty close. You got ON30, which is your narrow. So it uses like HO track with a O scale train, but it's like the old narrow gauges. So that even though they're O scale, they're still a little bit smaller, and those take up a little bit less space. Those are kind of fun. You've got G, which is your garden train set, and you've got T and Z scale. They're really tiny, and it's too small for me. N scale is pretty much as small as I can go. I even struggle with that. O scale is my favorite, and I think a lot of the older folks probably really like the O. It's just something that really peaked in the 1950s. So you're looking at 60, 70 years ago when Lionels were peaked, and it feels like the older generation wants these trains still, but the newer generations, if they even are interested in trains, they probably want HO, and HO has the biggest selection of anything. But they're expensive too, so you're not going to save any money really by getting HO. over O scale. So for like an 8 to 9-year-old, I played with my kids until they were probably 13 or 14. They still played trains with me. O scale's great. It's rugged, it's durable. The trains, they stay on the tracks. Sometimes the O scale, you get a train set that's got plastic wheels and crappy couplers, and it's really disappointing if the train doesn't stay on the tracks. So with O, everything stays on the tracks. You can couple it, you can pick it up, you can move it, you can see what you're doing, and I really, really enjoy O. So if I was going to recommend a starter train set for a kid, I would say get an older one of these with the steel drawbars, and set it up under the tree with your analog controller. You really can't go wrong. Appreciate you watching, and stick around for more of Tommy's Trains.